But let's take someone who is anxious, who's struggling with brain fog, battling with these things. What would be a typical pattern? How could you help them?
Yeah, and like I would not look at these two symptoms in isolation, but I'm going to further support your hypothesis of this archetype, right? There are a couple of things that I would look at. I'll look at the climate of the body and the landscape of the body.
Yes, important.
So
Just say that again because people, don't realize someone who's hot-headed or someone who's running very hot in Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. We know this well, but maybe
yeah.
just say the climate of the, maybe unpack that because that's someone's listening saying, okay, the climate, what does
Yeah.
that mean?
Yeah, so that just as the world outside has a climate, and that climate can support a certain landscape. For example, if it's hot and dry, it'll be a desert. No matter what you do, no matter what soil you bring from,
Hmm.
and Amazon rainforest, it's going to still become a desert because the climate is dry. So the climate determines the landscape. Our landscape is the body, and the climate is the actual state within us. So just the example that you gave right now, right? So, and of course, they support each other. So I'm going to use an example of a person, and my mind might end up creating my own archetype in this because which may be easy to understand in this particular example. So somebody who is just very dry, the climate is very dry, and this is the kind of person who has all these racing thoughts all the time. He feels very depleted inside, and he can see the wind in his gut, and he can see like bloating every evening. And even in his nervous system, his thoughts are racing so much that there's dryness. And now the landscape becomes dry. So this particular person would have dry eyes, may have dry skin, may have dry hair, may have, and they support each other, the dry, the land. And he may also be, a kind of person who's been on a long-term no-fat diet and said, I'm going to cut on all my fats, I'm going to work extra, I'm going to work out extra, is insomniac. So everything is dry, dry. The climate is dry and the landscape is dry. And in that, the metabolic heat has gone down in the system. So they cannot metabolize anything. I mean, just think of wind. If you have fire, which is a metabolic fire, we all need heat in we're warm-blooded mammals. And so the gut has gone cold as well for a person like that very often, right? So my first instinct, right, for anybody would be like, oh, the person has been so dry and depleted, literally like a cold, flat desert where grows. Nothing grows in a cold, flat desert, right? So in his body, nothing grows. The microbiome is so cold. There's no flora, there's no fauna. The idea would be like, oh, let's overnourish this person, but that's not going to work because he's not going to be able to break down and assimilate his nutrients. So with such a person, honestly, I'm going to take the Ayurvedic approach. The Ayurvedic approach would be to use grounding through breath practices, through oil massaging. So I'm creating a base, right? I'm settling the
Yes.
wind, but not through food. I'm not settling the wind down through food. I'm settling because the gut has no metabolic fire ability. So I would do the oil massages. I would do alternate nostril breathing. I would tell the person to go and join Qigong or Tai Chi and kind of start settling down in their nervous system. Use that oil to settle down in their body. Then I would do some navel oiling. I would start adding ginger to their diet, like rice congees and broths with ginger. And that starts to reignite the gut. And then over a period, and also very important with wind, which is all over the place and takes you all over the place, routine becomes very important. You do the same thing every single day so that your body is not all over the place. So sometimes, instead of saying, let me give you these herbs, let me give you this, let me give you this diet plan, you need like a step-by-step work. And very often a person like that would start to feel better, would start to sleep better, you can see their voice change, their skin and hair change. And when their digestion really builds up, well, I would do almost for 3 weeks, I would do the rice broth and the ginger powder. For dinners, I would do that. For the lunch, I'd give a leeway. But for dinners, I would even do that for as long as that. And then I would start to bring a little bit more nourishing foods. I would start to include more ghee, maybe more sweet potatoes, and more grounding foods. And I would always test constantly, are they able to metabolize this? Are they able to assimilate nutrients out of this? How is their bowel movements? And I've found that 3 weeks is the magic number to actually start noticing significant shifts in the body, like you start to realize that you're heading in the right direction. But that's how I would approach. But I would never do this with like, hey, this is your symptom, let me give you this treatment.
No,
Without
no.
the assessment and the landscape assessment. And the climate and the landscape, you see the patterns, right? You know the patterns in the desert, you know the patterns in Amazon rainforest, what happens in the morning, what happens at night. So, that allows you to look at that. So I look at people that I work with this whole mindset.
Good. Let's talk about, because I know we see a lot of, dry, hot individuals and that, and the oil, it's not something common that we do. So we would give cooling herbs and nourishing herbs, which is obviously a play. But I think what we can learn from Ayurvedic medicine is there are other things initially because the gut can't process that, which is sometimes where the gut doesn't get better. Is there
Yeah.
other disciplines in that? So talk us through
Yeah.
what type of oil. Like I find if I don't, and like people, my friends laugh at me, Nidhi, because I put this body butter on and I
Yeah.
just feel it soothes me with essential
Yeah.
oils and I feel
Yeah.
calmer and my skin, because I sweat easy, I run on the hotter side. So I
Yeah.
just find if I don't do that, I
Yeah.
just don't feel as relaxed. I feel on edge a bit. So tell us
Yeah.
about the oil involved with someone who's dry.
Yeah. No, so so you said hot and dry, right, Steve?
Yes.
Hot and dry. Yeah. Can I linger there for a moment? I'm very tempted to give you the oil right away, but I want to linger in the idea of
Yeah,
hot and dry,
yeah,
because that's what I see with the majority of the population. While my example earlier was dry and depleted and cold, but what I see here, even in New York, is we've become what I call overly solar.
mm,
And, it's like the sun, just as there's global warming outside, there is global warming inside the body. And there's this heat and dryness that everybody has because we are, like caffeine is hot and dry,
yeah,
and alcohol is hot and dry.
yes,
And people are just having people are working extra, people are working out extra, people are always on go, go, go. People are watching news, always on the social media, drinking caffeine, drinking alcohol, smoking weed. Everything is hot and dry. And then their body becomes hot and dry. And I wanted to take a moment to explain that because
yeah,
in Ayurveda, the first treatment for any condition is to identify the causes.
yeah, of course.
So I wanted to talk about how we see that, and everybody's liver is overworked
Yeah,
and everybody's body is really high. So the first thing that I would do, to be very honest with you, is there's a whole set of protocols that you do even before you get to the oil part of it, which is you first use the breath. So I always tell that they're cooling breaths. Like the right side of the body is the liver side of the body, which is the hot side, the sun side of the body, and the left side of the body is like the moon. I think traditional Chinese medicine has something similar, but the left side. I mean, it's not a coincidence that they came to the same point, right? Because it's
cool.
the science of it. And we have different names for it, but we have the same
Mm,
understanding. So there are breaths that yoga lent, the whole Vedic wisdom lent us as well. And so I would use like left nostril breathing. I would use as a particular tongue breathing, but we would also use, get this right, what we would also use is fragrances in the surroundings. So fresh jasmine flowers, all the white flowers which are floral smelling aromas makes a big difference. We would also use spending more time in moonlight, because just as the moon churns the ocean, it also churns all the liquids in our body and starts to create that nice dampness. That's why in the morning we're so sluggish, because over the night. So like walk in the moonlight, wear white linen clothes, listen to water sounds, so like those are the first line of protocols. Slow down, uh, do longer exhales, because every inhale is solar, every exhale is lunar. So you do longer exhales, right? I would start there, like with all of this. And without this, I'm not even giving you a certain herb. I'm not giving you anything. I will say, yeah, stop eating excessive tomatoes, shrimp, eggplant, spicy foods. I will say that. But I will say, I'm not giving you anything till you follow this protocol. And you'll see when people come back, they're so much more ready to receive. They're not ready to burn out my advice, because when you're hot and dry, you want to burn advice as well. You know, you feel excited at first and you're like, I'm exhausted. So that's what I would do.
yeah,
And then I would bring more of a magnesium-based product, transdermal. Then I would just, there are certain oils, like there's a sandalwood oil based on sandalwood. But these days, like I combine the wisdom of the modern science and what is available to people who live around the world, right? So there is one particular brand that I love of magnesium body butter, which has its roots in Ayurveda. And that's what I would bring. I'd say you start with that, right? Because I think magnesium is very moist, it brings the moisture back in the body.
Sure.
So I would do that. Oh, and there's a sandalwood based, it's called Chandanadi. There's a particular traditional name, but it's less accessible to most people.
Mm,
So my job is to keep it very accessible to everybody.
good.
And I would say this is easy for many people to do. Is Steve, there's this thing called the Kasa wand. Kasa wand. It's like this metal. You know how you have the gua sha for the face. There's this
Mm.
Kasa for the feet, and the feet is where you can release a lot of the heat. So I'd say put a few drops of coconut oil or ghee, if you can, on your feet before you go to bed, and give it a good rub with that
Wow.
tool.
Yes.
And you see that, of course, the color changes, right? It oxidizes. And in that oxidation, you can sense that heat coming out of your system.
Wow.
And so people want to jump first at the herbs and like, give me some magic pill. But the truth is, there's so much we can do without that. We don't have to constantly tax our livers for everything.